All right, let's talk about something that is absolutely critical to whether a business sinks or swims, but it's something a lot of people just don't talk about. It's called working capital. And I know it sounds a little dry, but trust me, understanding this is like having the secret key to business survival. So let's kick things off with a scenario that sounds like it's pulled straight out of a business mystery novel. You've got a company, right? They're the darling of their industry, sales are through the roof, they're posting record-breaking profits. And then, boom, out of nowhere, they're bankrupt.
I mean, how does that even happen? It feels like it shouldn't be possible. Profits are soaring. Everything on the financial statements looks amazing, but suddenly the lights are off and the doors are closed for good. It's a paradox, and it happens way more than you might think.
And here it is, the big reveal. The answer to our mystery has nothing to do with the profit that gets calculated at the end of the quarter. It's all about cash. Actual, physical, well, digital, cash flowing into and out of the bank account. Because that's what pays the rent, that's what makes payroll, that's what keeps the whole machine running. And that brings us to the hero of our story today, working capital. Now, the textbook definition is your current assets minus your current liabilities. So basically, the stuff you own that you can turn into cash pretty quick, minus the stuff you have to pay off pretty quick. But really, you can just think of it as the money you have available to run the day-to-day business. Oh, I love this analogy. Seriously, if a business is a living, breathing thing, then working capital is its blood. It has to keep moving, keep circulating, getting to all the vital organs, paying suppliers, covering salaries. If that flow slows down or stops, the whole system shuts down. It doesn't matter how profitable the company looks on paper. Okay, so if we're sticking with our medical analogy, it's time for a proper diagnosis. We need to trace the exact path that a dollar takes as it moves through the business. And this journey, well, it has a name, the working capital cycle. So the most important thing to grasp here is that this cycle measures time. How long does it take from the moment a company spends cash on, say, raw materials, to the moment it gets cash back at its hand from a happy customer? And, as you can probably guess, the shorter that cycle is, the better. You don't want your cash tied up for ages. So let's follow the money. Step 1, cash goes out the door to buy what you need. Step 2, you turn those materials into your final product. Step 3, you sell it, which is great, but that usually just creates an IOU, an invoice. And that brings us to the final and most critical step, collecting the actual cash from the customer. Only then is the journey complete. Now, to put a number on it, check this out. For this particular business, that whole 4-step journey we just walked through takes 89 days. Think about that for a second. That's nearly 3 months. For almost a whole quarter, a dollar that was spent is just out there in the wild before it comes back home to the company's bank account. And all during that time, you've still got bills to pay. All right, so it's clear we need to keep a close eye on this cash flow. But how do we actually do that? How does our business doctor check the company's vital signs? Well, we use a couple of simple but really powerful tools called liquidity ratios. First up is the current ratio. It's kind of like a basic annual checkup. All you do is take your current assets and divide them by your current liabilities. A healthy number is often said to be around 2. That means for every $1 you owe in the short term, you have $2 in short-term assets to cover it. It's a nice, comfortable cushion. But then there's a much tougher test. It's called the quick ratio, or sometimes the acid test. It asks a much scarier question. What if your sales just stopped cold tomorrow? Could you still pay your immediate bills? To figure this out, it does the same calculation, but first, it removes inventory from your assets. Because, let's be honest, selling off all your stock in a pinch is hard. Here, anything over 1 is considered pretty safe. Okay, so now we know what the vital signs are, so what happens when those numbers are way off? Well, just like with your health, you can run into problems by going too fast or too slow. And in business, these are 2 of the most common financial illnesses you'll see. So let's put these 2 extremes side by side. On one hand, you have overtrading, which is all about moving too fast. On the other, overcapitalization, which is about being too slow and sluggish. Let's look at the symptoms for each. Overtrading is that classic story of a business that's a victim of its own success. Revenue's exploding, which looks amazing from the outside, but behind the scenes, they're trying to do way too much with way too little cash. They're funding everything with short-term loans, their liquidity ratios are plummeting, and the whole thing is just incredibly fragile. It's a house of cards, really, just waiting for a breeze to knock it all down. Now, overcapitalization is the exact opposite problem.
This company has tons of cash, tons of inventory just sitting there, doing nothing. Their ratios might look super safe, maybe a 3 or a 4, but it's a false sense of security. All that cash is tied up, not being invested, not generating any returns. It's a sign of a slow, inefficient company that's missing out on opportunities. It might be safe, but it's definitely not healthy.
So the big takeaway here is that it's not about having a high number or a low number. The real art of managing working capital is all about finding the perfect balance for your specific company. It's about getting the prescription just right. And honestly, if you remember one thing from this, let it be this. There is no magic number. What's perfectly healthy for one type of business could be a death sentence for another. Context is absolutely everything. I mean, just look at this table. It tells the whole story. A grocery store can run with a current ratio of 1.5. Why? Because you buy milk, they get cash instantly. The cycle is super fast. But a computer chip maker, they need a ratio of 3.5. Their production cycle takes forever, the inventory is incredibly expensive, so they need a much bigger cash safety net to survive. And this quote just sums it all up perfectly. It's a constant balancing act. On one hand, you have to minimize your risk of going bust, of being insolvent. But on the other hand, you need to maximize the return you're getting on your assets. You're always walking that tightrope between being safe and being profitable. So next time you're reading about a company, don't just stop at the profit number. Dig a little deeper. Ask about its working capital. Look up its current ratio. Because now that you know how to check the vital signs, you can see what's really going on under the hood. Thanks for digging into this explainer with me.